Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Hi everyone, I'm Cheryl Charles, Chair of the Westminster School Board. I'd like to call the meeting to order at about 5:32, 5:33. Welcome everyone, and we'll begin simply by some introductions. I'd like to ask those board members that are joining us remotely today to introduce yourselves, and then we'll make introductions in the room here.
I'm Karen Blanchard. I'm on the Westminster Westminster School Board, sorry. Here I am.
I am Team DLC. I'm on the Westminster School Board.
Great, and thank you, back to you for being here, and thank you, Nicole, as well. In the room, starting with Ricky, please.
Ricky Adams, Technology.
Liz Hardy, Principal, Westminster Center School.
I'm Margie Ferry, Westminster School Board.
Andy Haas, Superintendent of Schools.
Jim Vizina, Finance.
Charlie Hutchison, Westminster School Board.
Well, thanks to all the board for being here. We've got actually a full house, thanks to all the board members, even joining remotely. The next item on the agenda is to ask if there are any adjustments. Are there any adjustments to the agenda from anyone? Okay. No, all right, thank you.
Before you voted, though, if I had a new item for the agenda, is that when I would put it on, or?
If you had a new item, we could not take action on any item that were added because it would have to be warned properly. But that would be the time either when you wanted to move when a topic would be addressed, you wanted to remove a topic, or you wanted to add one. That would be the time.
In which case, understanding there'll be no action today, could I add an item for our consideration?
Certainly, go ahead.
I want us to consider the policy which we considered last week about children staying in the school district when parents move out of it, so that we formulate a coherent policy.
Let's put that under old and unfinished business, and we can make it item C. And it's a policy question about students or family members requesting to attend another school in the supervisory union that is different from the district where they reside. That would be the question that we'd be
So
addressing.
it would be specific to Westminster, because we don't have any purview over the other school districts.
No, it's a policy that would affect everybody. We can only talk about it tonight. We can't take any action on it, but we can warn it for another meeting. Andy, did you want to comment?
I mean, the Westminster District can definitely have its own policy for how it may choose to accept students.
Yeah.
But, or school choice kids out type of thing. But it does have a ripple effect on other schools in the district and whatnot. And so I think it would be really important to take it to the policy committee prior to Westminster adopting anything, just so that they have a full understanding of what that potential impact could be.
Who's the policy committee? What is that?
Let's answer that later. There is a policy committee, and when we get to that item, which is
Okay.
not added to the agenda, we can address that. Thank you. Yeah, we'll just add it at this time. Any other adjustments to the agenda? Next item is communications and public comment, and that would be a question to see whether there's anyone participating who has a comment that they would like to make. Doesn't look like there's anyone there. Ricky, do you see? We see none. Review and approve the board minutes from July 28th. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve those minutes, then we can discuss. All right. Margie has moved. Charlie seconded, not needed, but done. Any discussion? Any corrections or changes?
I had one small question. I wasn't there last week. We were away, and or not last week, whenever it was. I'm on the warrant committee. Was that a assignment because I wasn't there?
Yeah, right. Team, you're on, we've got you on there.
Well,
Right.
Actually, with war, I didn't see that.
It was on there, I looked at it too, it was
All right,
Karen,
can you
Teen, and I don't have it with me right
I
here.
could send
Yeah.
that in my report, a little bit about warrants. I learned some information today.
Okay.
That might change or help us.
Change the discussion there. Let's do
Would
it
somebody pull up
because this
the-
is in the context of the minutes for just a minute. It's my understanding that we designate 2 people to sign warrants, but any 5 can serve, so that we always have another person who can sign.
So I checked with legal today,
Uh-huh.
because there's been a discussion at the high school board, so I wanted to make sure I had it correct. And the statute says that the board can vote and authorize any employee or member to sign district in the minutes of authorizing vote sufficient. So, so you can appoint 2 people, but you can also appoint everybody to be signers.
Right, that's how we have done that often in the past. We name 2 people who take responsibility for it, but say that any 2 members of the board, we haven't opened it up to other members of the community. May we consider that a clarification of our policy? And so when you see, it would be all
Okay.
5 board members.
So-
It's written as just Karen and Teen.
Right, so,
And
so if teen were to say be out of town, in the Bahamas, relaxing, and wasn't unable to sign a warrant, you could come in and sign and fill in without, there was some confusion at the high school board that I might have helped confuse, because I had heard somewhere that a vote had to happen every time there was a third placed on, but I checked with legal that it is sufficient that you can just come in and sign.
Perfect.
So shall we do a motion to say that it's everybody, not just these 3 people?
We could, that's not how it was discussed at the last meeting, but we can document it for our minutes tonight, that our policy is to name 2 people, it's currently Karen and me, and that any 2 can sign when we have a need for that. And that's relevant right now because Karen's traveling and warrants have just come up, and Tina was going to ask you if you could come in this week and sign them, and I'll follow up with you about that.
Yep. When you say this week, do you mean tomorrow or do you mean next week?
It could be early next week, right?
I think so.
Sure,
Monday or
okay.
Tuesday.
Sure.
So
Karen, yes.
I just want to clarify that it would be the chair that would make that decision, of the board, who would be the other the peer people, signing the warrants. I'm just trying to figure out the leadership here about how that happens. And I believe it's you, Cheryl. So that's what I'm wanting to say.
We have tended to do that at the time of reorganization of the board after elections in March. And we name people who serve on committees, people who serve, sign warrants and such. And so it's something that we mutually decide. It's correct that I could appoint someone, but in this case, we are mutually deciding. And again, our policy is any 2 sign warrants.
Yeah.
Any other corrections to the minutes?
I have one.
Yeah.
Nicole, sometimes you get my name spelled right and sometimes you don't. Thank you for the times you do. It's got an N, too many N's in it when it's wrong. So check out the one in the middle.
Correction of Charlie Hutchison's name.
Hutchison, I know everybody wants to say Inson, but it's Ison. Scottish version. Thank you.
So with the correction of Charlie's name and the clarified understanding of who signed his warrants, is there any other discussion on the minutes? Okay, then we do a roll call vote when we're in a remote situation. If we were all in the room, we would be able to say all in favor, say aye. But when we're in a situation like this with remote people, we do a roll call. So Karen, how do you vote?
Yay. Yes.
Thank you. Teen?
Yes.
Thank you. Margie?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Okay, and myself, and that's unanimous. All right, now we get to go into reports. Let's hear from the superintendent.
Thank you. Just a few things, and I've got some things to add to the report I sent out earlier this week. But just to let everyone know, the first day of school is Wednesday, August 31st. The maintenance crews have been working diligently, and I think this building just shines. I mean, we were just talking about it before the meeting started. You guys, I don't know if you can see the glow coming off the floor in here, but it is impeccable. So they've done a great job here at Westminster. But those folks always, they don't get enough recognition, and the work they do in the summertime is amazing. Renee Prue is our new transportation supervisor, and she has jumped right in. Bus routes are up. I think Liz has been talking. I think there's a couple of adjustments that are being made, for kiddos here specifically. But they're on our website. They can be found under family resources at the top of the website, so families can navigate there. One thing I did learn, I want to insert, I learned this today. There's going to be some work being done right up at School Street, and I don't know the name of that road.
Westminster Heights.
So Westminster Heights and School Street, starting September 5th, and it's going to shut that intersection down for 2 weeks. And so that, I guess the culvert has been eroded away, and they're going to be doing some work to repair that. So that Renee and Jim DeBell have been working out a scheme of how I think it's going to impact 1 or 2 families, and they've got a plan for that.
Yeah,
So
we have one family in Westminster Heights.
okay. Yeah.
I was just
So,
gonna comment.
but that'll also, your flow of traffic maybe
Yeah.
is going to be impacted.
Yeah, most of
so,
our traffic comes from that direction.
Last week, we hosted a nature-based institute along with Antioch University. We had 20 educators, pre-K through 6. It was here at Westminster School. It was a week-long immersion program, and it was basically building the foundation of understanding of nature-based teaching and learning. And it's the first step in developing our teachers' understanding of bringing learning outside the classroom and bringing the outside into the classroom. And it's part of our larger initiative within the SU to expand experiential learning for all of our students, pre-K through 12, and it includes work-based learning as well. So it's a large, greater initiative to really work with our kids just beyond the walls of our classrooms. Summer programming was a huge success. We ran programming here at Westminster Center School for kids from Westminster and Ath-Braff. They had a great time. Kim Budzik ran that program for us here, and it was a huge success. We also ran it at Central Elementary, Bells Falls Middle School, and the high school. And so we're going to be having a meeting coming up just to kind of review what went well, what can we improve on, what are those learning opportunities to start preparing for next year. So, but we also know that it had a huge impact on, not here, but in some other buildings, on just getting buildings ready. And I'm sure we can take a look at here also. Our new teachers, they'll be starting on Monday, August 22nd. And we have 3 days of orientation that Deb Cardane, our Director of Instruction and Innovation, and Joellen Barton, our Human Resources Manager, have been putting together. So typically we've only had 1 day, so this is the first, and having the teachers for 3 days to really kind of indoctrinate and bring them on board with WNESU. So we're excited about that. I think that's going to include a bus tour for our teachers. So we're going to be taking them around the whole SU, kind of showing them the different places and stuff. So.
Very
Let's see. All of our staff will be returning on Thursday, August 25th. We'll have a kickoff meeting at the high school in the morning, and then it'll be building-based for folks for the rest of that day. They'll also be back in. We have them for 4 days before school starts. And so on Friday, there'll be a building-based day. And then on Monday and Tuesday of the following week, all of our elementary school teachers will be taking part in Responsive Classroom 2, which is the second year of the Responsive Classroom initiative we started. And when Liz comes back, we have her speak to us so that she can explain it a lot better than I can, because she's been our lead on bringing it to us. And then our middle school teachers are going to take Responsive Classroom 1. So it's just a continuation of things. Liz, can you speak a little bit to Responsive Classroom, just the philosophy behind it?
Yeah, so the philosophy is a lot of proactive relationship building, community building practices where teachers are connecting with their students and connecting with the classroom as a whole, taking student interest to create engaging learning opportunities, and teaching social skills, right? Teaching and being proactive about how we want to act in this community, and that student behavior or how we treat each other and how we treat our space is a communal effort.
Thank you. So it's part of our whole social emotional learning piece. And when you start the school year, you know, we don't jump right into the ABCs right away. We want to get kids grounded, be part of a community, and work through some of those norms. Also, Kelly O'Ryan is joining us. She's going to be the restorative practice coordinator at the high school, but she's also going to be our SU diversity and equity coordinator. So overseeing Title IX and harassment, hazing, and bullying. So it'll be really good for us to finally have someone who's coordinating that across our whole SU. So it's also required.
You're lucky to have her. We are lucky to have her. She's really good.
Yeah, she was definitely a coup for us.
Score.
And then Erica Decker is joining us in the business office with Jim Mazina. And it's exciting to be able to say that the business office is fully staffed. And she's coming on in the accountant role and support. Jim's done a great job of putting a team together of some we were talking about really bright, really enthusiastic folks who are diving in and getting things fixed. Right, tomorrow? Everything will be fixed tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
We sent out our first payment of our retention bonuses. And that went out to all staff who are still with us. That's part of it. It was a total of a $1,000 retention bonus. And so $500 or proration went out on August 12th. And then the next big hurdle for the business office is the retroactive pay for our support staff with the contract. So that'll be a piece that they're working on. All these kind of payments are big lifts for the business office. So, and you know, on that note, it's really exciting to be able to start the school year with knowing that we have all of our collective bargaining agreements ratified, and that they are multi-year contracts. So we're not just jumping right back in this next year to have to go through that. And we're just excited for the school year to begin and look forward to the students returning.
Thank you, Andy. Are there any questions for Andy from board members remotely or those in the room? Seeing smiles, all right. Andy, I'd like you to make a comment about the Nature-Based Teaching and Learning Institute. That was voluntary, right? Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, thank you. So diving a little deeper in that. So we had looked at how can we, when we're looking at loss of learning, but also addressing ways to, again, work outside the classroom with COVID and pieces of that, but also knowing that not every kid is going to bring back their learning as fast if they're just sitting in a classroom. So we're trying to make those connections for kids because they learn differently. And so we had worked on building this relationship with Antioch and coming up with this institute. And so we had put it out, and we had 20 spaces for teachers to come. There was a stipend that went along with it, but because it was a week of I think they were full days, almost 8-hour days, so,
8 to
yeah. You know, my hope was that, geez, if we get 5 or 6, we'll be in good shape, because that'll be a good starting ground. We had a waiting list within 24 hours. We not only had classroom teachers, we had a school nurse, a school counselor, we had paraprofessionals. When we initially had conceived it, we hadn't even thought of preschool, and we had the preschool folks like, can we get involved? We thought about, because Westminster goes up through 6th grade, of course, so we were including 6th grade, and all of a sudden folks from the middle school wanted to be involved, and I mean, it was like, it's like one of those good, bad nightmares, right? 'Cause you're hoping you get a few, and then all of a sudden you got too many, and it worked out great. I was able to pop in one of the days, and the feedback from the staff that were here was just so energetic, and you know, folks saying that they were looking forward to school being back in session, and how they can, you know, from go and start initiating the things that they have been learning, and we've got it built in for the rest of this year to continue, you know, to support them, and then looking into next summer and having a second cohort, and just making this, you know, kind of getting the snowball going. So it's
Yeah, to add on, Andy, it did take place during one of the hottest, most humid, most uncomfortable weeks of the summer. And much of the learning is outside, and the engagement and commitment to the learning was so strong from all of the staff who participated. It was really impressive and motivating to start the year. You know, in the beginning of August, to have people show up from 8 to 4 on a super hot week. It's great.
I think one of the things I saw sitting out, and I took a picture of it because it was, I thought it was such a cool thing. It was, write a recipe for how you make a shadow puppet, or something of that nature. And it was like, the thought of how, like, I think a lot of people think nature-based, oh, it's going out into the woods kind of thing. And it's those kind of things too, right? And just this idea of the creativity that has to go through of how would I write a recipe to give to Jim on how he would make a shadow puppet. You know, like how that engages the mind.
Yeah.
It's exciting. So.
Thank you for all of that. I had a chance as a school board member to actually participate throughout the week. And I wanted to listen and hear and see how people were addressing it, what they were learning, what their questions were. And, you know, for those in the public who are listening, this doesn't change the curriculum. It just expands where the learning takes place. And so all the things that are required in the curriculum are addressed, whether it's literacy skills or math or whatever else. It might, lots of science, certainly, and all of that. But it does add, as Andy said earlier, an experiential dimension, kind of a hands-on, and being out in the real world and being able to do some things that are concrete and also inspiring. So I'm really glad that the supervisory union has supported this. And again, it's voluntary. This is a group of teachers who got interested in it, and I see, you can see that they're going to work with their colleagues in their respective buildings. I think it's really important that it was designed that educators from all the buildings in the supervisory union were involved, including preschool. And so just very exciting. So thank you for all of that. Any other questions for Andy? Okay. Jim, finance report.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So this report came out of e-finance today, and it balances, except the state of Vermont didn't really want us to use the object code for the assessment fees. And I think your assessments are something like 900,000. So the bottom line on that report is correct for the budget, except it doesn't show the assessment right now.
Are we on this one?
No, we're on the e-finance.
The bigger one.
Yeah, thank you.
Ricky's pulling it up for the folks online, so I just.
So, the other sheets, the function and object sheets, that you're probably not used to is, gives you a little bit of a insight as we're developing the budget, how that 24 on the far right will change. And I just want to say we've now got the insurances that we've placed in, and some of the other costs where we could determine that it had to be changed. I think principal and interest, we fine-tuned to where it should be. And those schedules will be part of your budgeting process anyway, so. It's early on, and again, we've not expensed anything. You look at the top line on the e-finance sheet, and you'll see for teachers that we really haven't spent anything. But it gives you some idea of what the budget is, and after this week, we should have a good indicator of what changes, because we'll have the new schedules in and new people. So we'll be able to show you exactly where we are.
Good. I have some questions, but let me open it up to others. Are there any questions from others right now?
Jim, just help me with the terminology, but you said objects and something else.
The objects and function page. In this sheet, this first page is the function. And again, it has like the 1101, which is at the top. Yes, 1101 is regular education. I've got general education. And it just shows you where we were last year on 22.
Mhm.
This year, the middle column, and next year is where we're starting to just develop the costs and bring that into focus.
Those are functions. I see why they're functions. So these
Yes.
then are all objects, are they?
Well, it's by object. What I did was I sorted this because I wasn't sure how, again, you are not getting the sheets because it's not working. But this sheet goes by function, which you've got the 1100s first, and it goes by object. And so if you look at the next sheet, you'll see 1101, and the object, which is a 5811, is dues and fees, of which we don't have a budget, but it goes in that order.
So what, the first thing I would ask is for these printouts to be dated. I don't see a date on here, and that would be helpful. This is progress toward giving the Westminster Board a budget to actual every 2 weeks or something like that. But you're having to create it. You did this by hand, right?
Yes.
To give this to us right now, because it
Oh, God.
isn't yet in the system.
Right.
But just to be clear, if Liz is approving items against this budget now, they will be showing up in that encumbrance line. Go ahead.
This is from e-finance stuff.
Correct.
So this one is from e-finance.
Okay,
So it's not, he's not extracting numbers and then putting them into a spreadsheet. He's
Okay.
downloading them.
Right.
So
It's a-
okay.
the function page
Is the one he created?
is a spreadsheet that Jim, has. So the encumbrances, the budget encumbrances, year-to-date expenditures, available balance, that's something you typically seen that was that Cognos spit out.
Exactly.
Looked different, but
Right.
that's what this is.
That's what, I see that, yeah. I was just, so I think for right now, all I'm missing is a date, so we can keep track of them.
Yep.
And Liz, you probably want to take this one, which is from e-finance and does show encumbrances, and compare it against the budget that you created. I'm sure it's all fine, but I think just a little discipline around.
Yeah,
that.
and again, I always try to tie into that bottom line. And knowing, gee, the assessments are not in there, 900,000.
Right.
So
but we will get those in soon.
Well, it is progress, Jim. Thank you very much.
Yeah, despite the Agency of Ed's, difficulties with the object code, they have closed it off, and we had to try to elicit some help in getting them to open it back up so we could put the numbers in.
Thank you very much for your patience throughout all of this. And I want to make another, do you have any additional to report right now?
No, I do not.
Well, at the last meeting, you presented us a tax sheet.
Yes.
And I want to say for the record that I hadn't seen that before, but what you gave us was completely accurate. It was just that it was a surprise to me. It was new, it was 2022, so you were pulling it from the state and it was quite accurate.
Yes, and I've always, in the budgeting process, as you develop it and say, and presenting this to the public, it's nice to have some sense of how does this affect the tax rate? And so I'm hoping that I can get there, but this is kind of a complex property tax situation, because you've got the high school, which is separate and distinct and adds on based on equalized students, so. I hope to get
I'm just
there.
remembering Charlie and I in particular were not familiar with that most recent document, and it has since been made very clear to me that that was absolutely accurate. It was just new to us, and so thank you again for that. And part of that discussion was to still project where we'll be with any surplus from the 21 budget.
Right.
And we still will have more, that audit's not done.
The audit isn't done, and I think she will be back in, I believe, the first week in November.
It's 22, isn't it? I missed.
It's 22.
Correct.
And that balance, that positive balance, will add on to the balance that you are carrying forward.
Right.
And hopefully, certainly a balance can't be left unattended long term. So, and by that I mean, the superintendent will have to recommend either going into a reserve account or a project that has to get done within the building.
Well, and so too, so all of this, and so too with the principal, make some recommendations, and all of this we can do, can we not, in the budget process this year?
Yes.
To address the two surpluses and create the 24 budget?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to add on, the finance committee met yesterday and reviewed, I think settled on a calendar for the SU budget, and so that the SU budget could be completed in a timely manner so that districts can then start building their budgets. But I think in parallel, we'll be able to be building district budgets at this, very similar times, because a lot of the, teacher salaries and stuff like that, they're pretty set, right?
Right.
So we'll be able to work with Liz and be developing that in tangent. So I think we will be much earlier this year than we were last year in showing budgets and having them ready for child.
Charlie has a question.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how these two relate to each other, because I noticed that this budget here, this is the 22-23 budget.
Yes.
This one, it has a different number for teacher salaries for 511.
And yes, and thank you for bringing that up, because I should say, we're trying to change and streamline the budgeting line items. Now, Charlie brings up the top teacher line. Now, I view this as if you have a guidance teacher that's licensed, gee, they're also a teacher. Now, it's all driven by the state Agency of Ed object codes. Now, the teacher object code is at 5111. That's it. But a guidance teacher is a 5171. A nurse, licensed nurse, is a 5171. So I want to try to eliminate the difference. I want to try to shrink the accounts where it makes sense, because we've got way too many. And I mean, I will say this, at the high school, they probably have 150 different salaried line items. Each salaried line items dumps in for a different FICA, different account. And so you've got account after account, and we're really not that big as a district. I mean, this is in Boston, and the accounts have to shrink to where we can use them for data and information. And that's what I'm finding very cumbersome at the time. So we're trying to streamline.
But if Liz wanted to for the board, she could break out of teachers make up a guidance counselor, a nurse, umpteen sixth grade teachers, like, so you could see where that bucket, what's in the bucket.
Yes, because.
But at this level, it's gonna be just the bucket.
Right, because you'll be getting the function page, which shows this. There's a whole set of object pages that attach to it. So if you wanted to look at the guidance, it has a breakdown for the entire cost. And again, I think it's data that's right there. So it should work.
Reggie has a question.
So what you're saying is that if we added up all of these little groups, paraeducators, this, that, all that, then they would add up to this other number.
Yes.
They're being subsumed within another group.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, and I thoroughly believe in clarity of data.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't want it to get confusing, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure why or how or understand how a 5171 teacher drifted off like that. I mean, I don't know, I've never run into it, but we've got to correct it.
Right.
The problem, and it's frustrating more for me than it is for you, is that in e-finance now, it's set up the old way. And it's tough to get it to condense the way it should. But in the future budgets, it'll parallel. Charlie, does that make sense?
Sort of, not to beat this to death, but the problem I'm having is
Into
that
that.
on this, whatever we call this one,
The object sheet,
the big sheet, the
Yep.
teacher line is considerably larger than in the other one.
yes,
So that means there's things in there that are somewhere else in the other one. So I'm just looking for where are those other things that add up to 1.125 million. Because there isn't any for 5171, for instance. Well, there must be somewhere else.
and you'd have to go through, I'm trying to think of
Not
all
that
of
I
the
not that I need you to
objects.
find them, but
Sure.
are they just reassure me that they're there somewhere?
They're there somewhere.
Great. That's
And,
what I need to know.
Yeah, if you pull all of those, and I converted, for my budget, I've converted the 5171 into the 5111. So it sucks all of that, I can just pull it together
No.
easily.
So no, these are not telling different stories, they're somewhere in there,
Yes,
there are equal amounts for teachers.
that's correct.
Great.
Right, so the goal is still to make this more clear, less confusing. Thank you.
Yes.
We're making progress, even though we're not
Making
quite there
progress.
yet. Yeah, thank you. All right, principal's report.
Sure,
Yes.
absolutely. Like Andy said, our first day of school is Wednesday, August 31st. We are expecting between 159 to 162 students. There's still a few that we are unsure if they'll be coming, but we're at least having 159 students. Like Andy was saying, we had our nature-based education. Westminster had 7 participants in a week-long course through Antioch. Again, I heard wonderful things about the learning this week, and staff are enthusiastic with newly learned materials to practice. Our open house, we're bringing back our annual open house, which will be the Monday before school starts. So it'll be Monday, August 29th. The open house will run from 5:30 to 6:30. Families can come anytime between that hour to see classrooms, meet staff. We will also have ice cream out back, a lemonade stand, so people can enjoy the playground and connecting with families. Our first week of school, just a reminder that for the first 3 days of school, August 31st, September 1st, and September 2nd will be half days for kindergartners. So this means that they can arrive as normal between 7:45 and 8 o'clock, but their dismissal will be 11:45. So breakfast and lunch are provided as normal. Of course, families can send in their own lunch if they'd like with their student, but Vermont has universal free breakfast and lunch for all students, so that will also be available for kindergartners during a whole day or a half day. Our after-school program will start the week of September 12th. So information will be out to families the first weeks of school with sign-up and club options and all the information regarding after-school program, and which runs 5 days a week, 3:15 to, I think our bus leaves here at 4:45, and parent pickup goes until 5 o'clock. Camp Keewaydin, so our sixth, that'll come right before you know it. That is going to be the week of September 12th as well. So sixth graders will be heading to Camp Keewaydin, which is a camp in Salisbury, Vermont, right on Lake Dunmore. And this is a week of experimental, hands-on learning opportunities. And we really feel this is instrumental in creating a community among our sixth grade students and setting up the year for success. So those are the highlights at this point. Are there any questions?
Pickup was at 11:45 for
Kindergartners.
and what's the pickup for a normal day?
We're going to start dismissal this year at 3:10. Yeah, I'll be sending out a newsletter. I usually send them on Thursdays, so that's something that families should know. We send out a family newsletter every Thursday. I was prepared to send it out today, but we have an admin meeting tomorrow morning, and I wanted to be part of it in case there were any last-minute changes that I wanted to include in the newsletter. So it'll go out tomorrow. I know, it sounds strange, but so that'll be going out tomorrow to families with all of those details.
Okay.
Just to remind us to let Renee know about the early pickup for kindergarten.
I did, yeah, I connected with her, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Karen or Teen, a question for Liz, anything? No?
No, it's great that Camp Keewaydin's back. That is such an amazing experience for kids. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
What about assignments to teachers? Has that gone out yet?
Yep, so
For
teacher
grade
letters
level?
went out this week.
Okay.
So families should have received a letter, except for kindergarten families. They're going to be working as one group the first 3 days of those 3 half days. And kindergarten families about teacher placement by the end of the day on Friday.
Okay. And let me ask you, no, I think I'll do that later under community engagement. Never mind, I'll hold that question. So looks like no other questions for Liz right now. All righty. Resignations and appointments, if any.
I don't have any at this point.
Oh dear, really, no nurse.
We are optimistic, Charlie.
I've got the feelers out. I've got the feelers out. I just emailed 3 people about it this week.
Well, we can address that right
Yeah,
now.
we
Oh, go ahead.
believe that we will be asking to have a special meeting, and so if folks can, we can agree to it. We might be able to have a special meeting on Monday because we have a candidate we believe will be bringing forward Monday.
So that's.
But it's just, there's a chain of events, and so I just couldn't get the person here today, so otherwise.
Have I met this person?
Yeah, who is it?
I don't think so.
I don't think we can
Okay.
overly speak, so.
Okay.
So the question for the board, and we probably could verify it on date and time of next meeting, but in the context of a possible new appointment, it's been recommended that we consider holding a special meeting on Monday, which would be August 22nd. So let me ask the board while we're on this topic, is there a time of day that doesn't work for you? I mean, can you be flexible? What does it look like for a special meeting to be held on Monday, August 22nd?
Thinking 15, 20 minutes.
15 or 20-minute
Can it
meeting.
go online?
No, definitely, we can make the hybrid.
August 22nd, is what you just said?
Mhm,
Before
Monday.
8 o'clock?
What, Charlie?
in
Not before 8 o'clock.
No, before 8, all right. For the traveling person on the, yes,
I
Karen?
just say is that as long as it's not like 5 o'clock in the morning my time, so I'm 3 hours difference. That's all I need to say. So if it's in the afternoon or the morning, it works. That's all I'm going to say.
I won't be able to do anything in the afternoon.
Teen just said afternoon? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I have children screaming behind me. I can't do anything in the afternoon.
Okay.
Cannot.
No afternoon.
So if, what I'm wanting to say is that where I'm sitting, if you did it any time, like seriously, if you did it, whatever I'm trying to translate, if it was 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock or in the morning, that would work for me, if that works for you. Or noon. I don't know if teen can do noon, but like 8 to noon would work for me.
Right, I could do
for,
noon.
for you, you know what I mean?
We'll figure it out. That's very helpful, both of you. Thank you. And we might know by tomorrow because we have to warn the meeting.
Correct, yes, well, we should know by 12:30 tomorrow.
Okay, so we'll have it figured out by 12:30 or so tomorrow. That's great. Thank you. So under old and unfinished business, the first is plans for community engagement. And I wanted to revisit this again, Liz. I think there are a lot of opportunities, but the first of those is Monday, August 29th. And so wondered if you again would say, you did report on it, but just invite community members and let them know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I mean, any community member is welcome to join and meet. We have a slew of new staff that'll be here. And just see, put faces with names, enjoy being part of our school community, and connect with staff, and then join us in the playground for lemonade and ice cream. Anyone is really welcome to join us on that night.
That's great. And then what about what historically was team or a parent-teacher group? What's going on with that, and when do they meet, or will they meet?
Yeah, so team hasn't met yet. And that, I think, let me look at my calendar. I believe we solidified in June. We were meeting on Thursdays, but I don't have a date and time for the meeting right yet. That's a great reminder for me to get in touch with our team president so I can get that out to new families. And they meet every month.
May I have just mentioned, I'm not back until really the 2nd of September. So I would love to be a part of this. Excuse me. I would love to be a part of this later on, and maybe we can figure out a way for that to happen more for, whatever. But just know that if I'm not there, it's not because I don't want to be there.
Good.
Great,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely. So let's bring to the board more information when you have it about team, about the parent-teacher group, and what it's doing. And then I think I saw in a recent newsletter or letter, an encouragement to community members who might want to volunteer in the schools again to come see Bridget Goodell in the office. Is that correct? And how does that work?
So with any person who's going to be volunteering in the school, will need to check in with Bridget. And if they are alone with children, they would need to go through the background check protocol of our SU. But if they're going to be volunteering in the school with just alongside a teacher, they could just check in with the office and wear our visitor badge and join. But if anyone in the community or board wants to volunteer in the school in any capacity, they could definitely reach out to me and talk and brainstorm about what would be the best, most appropriate way.
That's perfect. And then I would also encourage, I'm looking at Fact TV being here and people who may watch, we always at the board meetings have this time for communication and public comment. And so would genuinely encourage anyone who wants to come and make a comment, typically 2 minutes or less. It's a time to offer an expression of appreciation or concern or a question that the board would address. It's not a time for dialogue or debate, but it is a time for the public to raise issues if anyone would like to. So we would just like to encourage that as well.
And another thing I wanted to mention too is our after school program is always looking for people who want to run or assist with clubs. So if you have a specific interest or talent that you think that would be interesting for kids to learn about, you are always more than welcome to reach out to me or our site coordinator, Kim Budzik, or our after-school program director,
It should
Sarah.
all- It should go through Sarah.
Yep.
So,
And so anyone who's interested in being part of that, they can reach out to me and I can direct them to the right source.
To Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great, thank you. Just to revisit and how important it is and how exciting it is to have, again, the opportunity for more community involvement. And I think we've already addressed the preliminary budget planning and surplus funds. We talked about that a little bit earlier. And let's now go to the new item that Charlie requested, which is old business, but talk a little bit about policy related to students choosing to be at a school in which they don't live in that district. Andy, would you address finance committee, the policy committee, and anything else you want to say? You're
Before I
backing up
jump
to
into that-
something else.
Is it okay with the board if I excuse Jim just because of his drive and?
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Very
Thank you,
helpful.
Andy.
Sure. I didn't know if we were gonna go further in the
That's great, thank you.
surplus. I didn't ask earlier. So the policy, so we have a standing policy committee for the SU that reviews all of our policies because policies kind of trickle down from there because every district should basically have the same policies type of thing. But each individual district can also develop policies beyond that are, they can't circumvent those recommended policies, but they can expand upon them, type of thing. So, so I guess where I was just going is if, excuse me, if the Westminster board wanted to create a policy that had to do with student choice or whatnot, and it was and I'm just going to make things up, a student from a family from Rockingham wanted to have their student come here, we really want to look at what are the implications of having that happen, because there are actually some statutes around that also. And so, and where do dollars flow and things of that nature, because, and so, in a whole hypothetical situation, you could create a policy saying that you're going to allow families to petition and you can accept for a family to come here free of charge. That student may come and may actually be in need of student services and special education that is an extremely high cost. And so you would be absorbing that cost. But then if you were to say, wow, that's a high cost, so we're gonna say no to that person, but yes to this person, you're getting yourselves into legal jeopardy that I would caution you around. If you were looking at a policy of, teachers could bring their students. I've worked in school systems where teachers have had the opportunity to bring their child with them to work, kind of thing. It can be an incentive to bring people. I think that would be something that the board could explore and look at, but it would be that same implication, just knowing where you can't say, again, Ricky wants to come and he's working here and he brings his child and it's all great. Liz comes, Liz's child has a high special needs type of thing. And you can't say no. You've got to know when you create these policies where the pitfalls can be. So, but again, I think it would also be bringing that back to that policy committee to say this is what Westminster is looking at, because it might be something that isn't favorable for the entire SU.
So currently, Charlie sits on the policy committee representing Westminster. It's a district-wide, SU-wide policy committee. We all get the emails kind of announcing when the policy committee meetings are. We're all welcome to go at any time. But Charlie sits there officially.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Andy, for clarifying some of those things. I think we already know that it's not going to fly well with some districts, based on some conversations that have happened at recent board meetings. So the question is, so I can imagine we go to the policy committee, it's stalemate, it doesn't go anywhere. I doubt it's going to go. Who knows? Best of all worlds, it might go somewhere, but but I don't think there's a great appetite out there. So then the question is, does Westminster want to go it alone under a limited set of circumstances? And I think we could be somewhat arbitrary about the restrictions we place on this. We could say it's only available to staff, or we could say it's only available if a person's been in the school a certain period of time, or whatever. But I wonder if we were to come up with a policy which we wanted to implement, which would serve no cost to other districts. So clearly, we would be only being about accepting students, not sending, because that's a cost to other districts. Where we would accept students who, for a variety of defined reasons, need or want to stay in this school or be in this school. I'd like us at least to have a conversation about what those parameters would be. And by all means, we could share it with the other districts. I don't think it's going to fly.
Right. And again, I would want to, number one, see some legal opinion on this, because as you're talking on, and it's occurring to me, I don't know how that might impact Title I funding, how that would impact, because again, if a student were to come here that maybe was qualified for free and reduced lunch, do they get reported here as a student, which increases the free and reduced lunch count for Westminster, but that then decreases the free and reduced lunch count for the other district, which one student isn't going to change the balance of things, but potentially could, you know, and so a district could lose title funding where Westminster benefits. So those are the kind of legally things I don't know. So
Karen has a question.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, there was I know fact, I'm not going to mention names, but I thought there was during Grafton and Athens, there was a student that went from one place to another, and it was voted on by the larger body. Am I right about this?
Yeah, it was like our first week, Karen, on the board or something.
Our first week. So I'm just curious about, I know that we're not part of, I don't know what to say, but that did happen at some time, Andy. So I don't know I'm with Charlie about this in terms of precedent, for sure. I mean, the issue is precedent, and Andy, you're making mention of that. In other words, if you do it for one, you do it for another. But I do know that there was something going on between Athens and Grafton. That's all, a student exchange or something like that.
Go ahead, Karen. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I'm finished. I just wanted to know if you could if there's any comment to be made by that, or whether that was an error in judgment. That's all.
No, I would have to research each individual reason, and sometimes there are reasons that aren't necessarily just public consumption for why a student might be attending another district. And so I'd have to go research it so that I just had that information.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
But I think, like, the point is that it is happening regardless of the reduced student lunches. Like, your point, it has occurred. And it is affecting those numbers. So, like, there is a policy which is that we look at each individual case as it goes, and, and that
There
has
is
occurred.
no policy to it. So
Right, there's no policy to it, but I mean, the current policy is that we look at each individual case as it comes.
I'm wordsmithing it here just because we're public. There is no policy.
All right.
There's a practice.
That's
Right,
correct.
that's
Right.
why I use the.
Yeah, so I mean, it's, and just because there's some legal
Implications.
ramifications around policy.
Correct, I get
So
that.
there has been some practice of students from one district attending within, sometimes it's through special education.
Right.
Sometimes it's through a 504 process.
Right.
There have been some other ones that were not I wasn't involved in,
Right.
for why those pieces happened. And I think it would be important and prudent to have some stronger guidelines
Yeah,
around how things are happening. I mean, you have school choice already in this district for 7th and 8th, and again, all I'm saying is, I haven't had the time or taken the time to really research it to even be able to say to you, yeah, it's all worked out already and it's not a big deal. I mean, that's what I want to be able to say, but
right, we just don't
I
know.
just know that I'm just brainstorming possible logistical problems, and I want to make sure I don't advise you to set a policy and then end up with a bigger problem.
Right.
That's all.
And you're saying, Charlie, that you don't think a policy would go anywhere with the policy committee? Like, if we came up with a policy that we thought made sense, you think the policy committee would turn it down?
All I know is that 2 WNESU district-wide board meetings ago, there was a fairly contentious conversation about this very subject, in which at least one board member expressed extreme hostility to the idea of paying for students from outside of their home district, or absorbing any costs associated with kids moving. So,
Within the district?
there was some amount of heat. I didn't understand the history to it, but who knows? Maybe things have softened down, maybe, whatever, maybe people can be persuaded. But I'm not optimistic, given what I heard. I listened to the tape of the meeting, that it would be an easy lift to persuade other districts to accept the free flow of students between districts and absorbing the cost thereof.
But that wouldn't be the policy. Like, free flow wouldn't be the
No, no.
policy. We'd create a policy that made sense, maybe, and that was palatable. You know, like, I feel like what you're saying is that we can't have this free flow, but that's not what we're asking for.
Well, and what I'm saying is that we were asked to accept the students into this district, into the school who will no longer actually live in the district. And I think there are probably very good reasons why we might want to do that sometimes.
Yeah.
But we can't assume that other districts, other school boards would
Wanna
agree
do
that they would want to do the same thing.
Right.
So, which would amount to free flow or school choice if they all did. If every school district said yes, bring on,
So
that would be good, wouldn't it?
the problem that lies within that is all of the districts had an opportunity at one time to become a school district. And that
Yes.
was rejected. And if all the individual districts had agreed to become a one Wyndham Northeast school district, then kids could go anywhere they wanted to and free flow between the schools. It's my understanding that Rockingham, as a school district, voted in favor of joining that, but Athens, Grafton, and Westminster at the time chose not to remain independent.
That's correct.
Which created the supervisory union. And then from that, the state forced Westminster and Athens to join at some point, which then you've now separated again. So the statute around that, and I can't quote it, but my understanding is it's very restrictive on this ability to move kids back and forth. And that was the whole point of 46, Act 46 was to allow you to do that. I'm only cautioning that I would want to make sure we got good legal counsel, even if you were to open it up for staff, that you just weren't putting yourself as a board in the district in a legal bind. That's all I'm saying, is just, I'd want to do that homework. But as a district, you can make a policy that is separate from the other districts. It just cannot negate. It's kind of like the, federal to state to county, like you can't say that federal law no longer exists because we don't want it as a state. You can write a policy that is narrower than the broader policy, but you can't broaden the already big policy.
presumably the supervisory board would not be able to prohibit us from accepting students. They can only say they're not going to endorse it.
Right, or
Correct.
they won't pay for it,
Right.
but they can say they.
Oh, well, so there's clearly history and clearly some bad blood behind some of this that I don't know anything about. So all I'm suggesting is we have our own conversation and see what we can tolerate in our district and what we can justify.
Yes, I see two
Can I-
hands.
I'm just putting my hand up because I have to go.
Okay.
So I'm just saying goodbye to everybody.
Oh, all right, thank you so much.
I'm
team.
sorry that I'm leaving early. Sorry.
No problem, thank you. Well, I'll be in touch about the special meeting on Monday if there is one. And our next meeting is September 15. It's our next monthly meeting. All right, thank you so much. Have a
Thank
good
you
evening.
so much. Sorry about that.
Problem, no problem at all. And Karen, you're still okay for a few more minutes?
I am. I was just saying goodbye to Dean.
Okay, great, thank you, thank you. And so for that discussion, which became more a conversation, which would not be typical for a board meeting, but was valuable, I would say here, it will be continued. And I, we have so practice to date has been case by case.
Right.
And it is the case that this has affected each of the districts that are members of the supervisory union. It's not just Westminster that's addressing this at all. One correction to what I heard you say, and it may have just been something I misheard, but in that long process around Act 46 and the votes that occurred, we were already a supervisory union. We were already a supervisory union,
Yes.
right? It's just that we remained a supervisory union and we did not combine to become a new school district, one school district. And the concept behind that is still the desire in Athens, Grafton, and Westminster to bring as much as possible the discussion of the schools to a town level rather than diffusing it. Rockingham was fine because they're already.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought Teen was actually gonna speak to it at one time because in
Right.
her district in the southeast.
Where she teaches.
They were a supervisory union, and I didn't mean to mislead that there was no supervisory union prior.
Yeah.
But they had a similar situation, and then under Act 46, they joined, and they are now the Wyndham Southeast School District.
Right.
So instead of having, I think they had 6, 7, a lot of boards, they now just have one school board.
They have two
because
because Vernon is.
Vernon is separate, correct, yes.
Would be really helpful for me if we could move on to the next agenda items, if you don't mind, so that we can get through the agenda while I'm still here. I would like that a lot. So.
And thank you, Charlie. I mean, it's a very important subject. It's complicated, and I think this discussion was actually helpful to all of us. So the next topic is under new business, and I'll start with a question for Liz. The item is to have the board accept the Outdoor Gear Exchange Charitable Grant Fund. This is a letter that was dated May 15th, but it was just sent to me. Has that already occurred?
Yes, I sent that to the central office when we received it on May 15th. So we were awarded $2,000 with this outdoor gear exchange grant fund. And our plan is to use that to buy outdoor gear for students to use, specifically rain gear, boots, rain pants, raincoats for classrooms to use.
And is there any board action? I was surprised that the board needs to accept the $2,000 grant.
So we are working on a procedure, talking about policy too, that there should be a policy in place for accepting those. I would always recommend anything over $1,000 that a board accept that as a,
Okay.
that would be my recommendation, that just as a board, you're acknowledging it. It's a nice way for whoever's, doing the grant or the donation.
And
Recognition.
And typically, having actually the Westminster School Board in years past actually helped develop grant proposals, for example, to the Children's Literacy Fund, and we received some. And so the board has the authority actually to help develop grant proposals as well by policy. in the statute as well. But I do think it's good practice for us to do this. So I'd entertain a motion.
Question.
Yes,
Is this the right one for questions?
I think a motion on the floor and then there can be discussion. And so the motion that I'd entertain is for the board to accept a grant in the amount of $2,000 to acquire outdoor gear for our students from the Outdoor Gear Exchange Charitable Grant Fund.
Second, so moved.
Okay, and discussion. Charlie?
Oh, they make a big point in that letter about can you find it cheaper somewhere? So has that become a problem, or
No,
does that spoil any plans you've made to get it from the original name? I can't get the name of the original. And
no, I think we are still kind of working through this. And so I don't believe we've ordered at this point the gear, but it hasn't been an issue.
And then just for the record, as a grant recipient, the school and the school would be asked, the district recipient, really the SU, but the Westminster School District would be responsible for 3 high-resolution photos to be shared for use on their website, mentioning the grant in our primary channels of communication, and submitting a letter at the end when the funds have been exhausted, just to report on that. So it's standard kind of grant reporting. So it is. So there's a motion on the floor. Let me ask Karen if you'd like to vote. Whoop, can't hear you, Karen.
I had to move because everybody's coming into the house. Yes, I say yes to the gear.
Thank you. Charlie?
yes.
Margie?
Yes.
Okay, and Tina's gone, so approved. That has been done. We've actually already, I'm not going to do the photos, I'll do that another time. We want to put together, I think there'll be a whole report about the Institute. And did you want to address briefly, Andy, the discussion that occurred last night about the Early Learning Center and offices, where we are with next steps possibly?
So we had developed a concept approval or a concept of an early learning, an early childhood learning center and central office or superintendent office combination with an idea of trying to address some of the deficiencies we see as kids are coming into our supervisory union unprepared for school, knowing that COVID had affected many of our kids, especially young kids. And also with the idea that we know that there is a need for childcare services in our community. And that the more times we can get children or provide childcare services for families, that's going to get families back to work. And so that whole idea. And then also noting that the supervisory union offices, there's a considerable rent and lease that goes with it. And so looking at those pieces, so that was some of the discussion last night. And so we had approached the state under ESSER funds to get, to use ESSER funds to do the construction of these 2 spaces combined. And we had, to go through the process, you have to go for concept approval, which basically means you come up with this idea and you try and think of how much it'll cost, and then you ask the state, and the state says, is that ESSER worthy? Kind of like, does it fit the parameters of ESSER? And if it does, then they say you got concept approval, so now you're able to move ahead with getting an engineer, getting an architect, getting, doing any RFPs you might need to do and things of that nature. And so as we've been going through this process, we'd also been asked by the SU board to develop a business plan to come back, because what we currently offer is a couple of classrooms for families and using the universal pre-K that we have. And what we wanted to do was open it up not just to folks even within our own community, but so that it would be a profit-making endeavor. And so the idea of come up with a business plan, because we know how to run schools, but we don't know how to like that kind of a business plan. And so Jennifer Keenan had reached out and working with a group called Heart of the Child,
who, that's what they do, is they help develop business plans and feasibility studies for preschool and early childhood stuff. So we're beginning to have the conversation with them to develop that. We're looking to have that ready. We've asked that we've had that by September 14th, so that we can bring that back to the finance committee, but also to the SU board, so we can show that we're, we run our numbers that show that there's a need, but this would be an outside independent evaluation. And then we also went out with an RFP for engineering and architectural proposals. We got back 3 bids from 3 very reputable companies. Let me go off the top of my head here. So there was the, I know it's MLA, but I can't. Studio, thank you. Studio MLA, which is a company that works, does primary work in early childhood centers and developing and designing them. We got back a proposal from Black River, who's done work in our SU at the middle school. And then we got back a proposal from Stevenson Associate, who is has done work at our high school. So we're familiar with 2 of them very well. And then the Studio MLA, as I said, has an expertise in early childhood development centers. When we kind of did apples to apples and tried to compare them, look at it, but they were slightly different. The Studio MLA actually came back at the lowest cost, but actually offered us the most flexibility in helping us not only look at sites and where would be the appropriate site to place this, but also in community engagement and talking with our families and talking with our staff of what are our needs. And when you're developing this, it's not just pulling it off the shelf, it's being designed for what we need, type of thing. And so the discussion last night was really about wanting to really get the procedure down and not trying to put the cart before the horse, and making sure we've got the business plan, and that's informing us of where we are. And so I think that's pretty much, it was a lively discussion, but it was a good discussion to have. So,
yeah, well, so we've talked about it briefly here before. That the recommendation for consideration by the boards came out of the ESSER committee. Monies to be used would be the federal monies to both look at the feasibility, the analysis, the needs, but also the cost of any architectural services that are only design. That's what this first request for proposals was. So I just wanted the board to be updated on it, because it's a significant possibility and opportunity, and to think about it from your perspective and talk to community members and see what you think might be the level of interest and need. Again, I know we've been talking about it before, and it continues. So I just wanted everybody to be current.
and if I could just add, because I mean, the original, we've gone out and spoken with a firm to just kind of, when we're doing this concept of where are we as far as what the cost might be, because we had, build a house, I don't know how much it costs in money and construction. And so we were consulted to set aside about $5 million. And so, so we're trying to work within that, not the idea that this would be totally funded through the federal dollars and not cost our taxpayers anything extra. But it's a large proposal. We're talking about a 10,000 square foot building. So
Somewhere in one location or several?
ideally, it would be one location, because then we can have our SU services, which involve a lot of our student services, so special education, that work with early childhood special education. We work right with those kiddos. As families are coming in, it's a kind of a one-stop shop. And so that was, the idea was to bring it together. There's also some savings with, the idea, like right now, I won't quote the total number, but an E-rate savings that we're doing. Karen says she needs to leave soon, so I'll try and finish up and let her ask questions. But there are some savings by having the offices with kids, so.
Karen, you need a question or just to let us know you're going?
Need to go, but I want to say I appreciate all the work that's being done about this. I'm very excited about it. Really, that's what I wanted to say. So thank you, Andy, and all. I'm sorry, I have to, I'm sharing a space here with a lot of people, so I have to head off.
No problem at all. Thank you. And I'll get back to you about the special meeting if it occurs. Otherwise, you'll be back for the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye. Take care.
Bye. All right, Charlie, yes.
The whole thing seems very exciting. I forget which meeting I was listening to where there was a bunch of, it was sort of a bit of grumbling, let's say. Why can't we use the high school? There's plenty of space in that. Why can't we use the middle school? There's plenty of space there. So
Yeah.
what is the current thinking in that respect?
So when we did our analysis and looking at it, with the amount of space that would be needed for student space, we would be taking up a considerable amount of a building. And the high school is designed as an open concept high school. And to go put walls up actually creates quite a bit of challenges, because you're dealing now with fire blocks, and the building would have to be redesigned. And so going into that building was the reason why with the littles, we didn't really dive too deep in there. The classrooms that we currently use, a classroom here at Westminster, and we use a classroom at Central, and it's great space, and there's a lot of positivity of having the kids in the building and whatnot, but it's a space that's not designed for preschool. It's a space that's designed for kindergarten through 6th grade. And so accessing some of the outdoor equipment, because part of this whole proposal also includes folding in our nature-based learning and opportunities for kids in play. And the equipment that we have, like at Central and here, is not necessarily designed for that age space, for the preschool space. Bringing in, looking at the 0 to 3 age,
Right.
which is infants and toddlers, we're not able to provide that opportunity for families right now. And then with the spaces that we have, we're not able to also provide after-school care. The same way that we would look at a program that's purely designed for that. So that's the reason we didn't look there. With the supervisory union, which was some of the discussion of could the supervisory union go into different buildings, the supervisory union needs approximately 2,500 square feet just for office space.
For that 0 to.
No, supervisor, the central office. So we need 2,500 just office space.
HR.
Currently you need this.
Yeah.
Or not for this new program.
No, well, that's the amount of space we basically need for all of the folks who work out of offices and in the 2 buildings that we currently have. And we have people in our basement right now.
So I see. So this is actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. It just seems weird to provide, childcare for young children, but have it be in one, like, people won't be able to get their kids there. They can't go and drop people off and then drive 3 hours back to work.
So we have families, and we have been, Jennifer did quite a bit of research. There are families from Springfield that are driving down to Brattleboro for
drop their
childcare.
kids off.
We have families here that are doing the same thing. There are people in Brattleboro who are going up to Springfield to drop kids off because everyone's looking for childcare. There are people who work down in Massachusetts from Springfield, so as they're driving down.
But aren't we asking them to do the same thing if it's one central location? You know what I mean? Like versus being in some of the smaller, like having it be smaller, more spread out locations.
So,
I mean, but I think what I'm confused about also, just to overview, is that I'm like, I want to have discussions, but we're not allowed to have discussions. Is that kind of the thing here? Like, I'm confused about the style
Of the meeting, right,
Yes.
right. Well, I think that's fair. You know, there, as a board, there are business items that we're supposed to address.
Right.
There are opportunities for more fulsome discussion, often done in a retreat format or
Oh,
a community conversation format or something like that. At this board meeting, we certainly try to allow for that. Were this the supervisory union board meeting with people from all of the school districts, it's much more formal, and we operate under Robert's Rules of Order for small boards, and you're supposed to ask the chair for permission to speak. It's
uh-huh.
not as much a conversational style.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with it here in this small group setting. And there are limits to it. So you're, I
Right.
mean, it's
I
very
don't
fair.
want to
for-
be messing this up.
No. It's really fair for you to be asking. So I think we have a little bit of accommodation here, and we'll have to work out what's reasonable.
Or maybe I'm just on the wrong committee, like maybe I need to be on a committee instead, or
Wouldn't want
whatever.
you're in the wrong place. It's
Yeah.
great to have you on the board.
Yeah.
I just do have a procedural question.
Sure.
Who are the deciders on this?
ultimately, it will be the supervisory union because that level of pre-K is handled out of the supervisory union. We obviously would like all of the districts to be on board, and we're not trying to do that. The supervisory union office is a function of the supervisory board. Supervisory union cannot own any property. And so therefore, we can only rent or
Build.
but we can't build. So we would have to partner with another district. So hypothetically speaking, if Westminster said, we think this is a great idea, and we want the supervisory union to be here on our property. So the Westminster School District owns this property. The Westminster School District can say, Andy, you can have that red little shed out there for your office. And that's what we're providing. And so we either have to rent space or come back into the buildings and have space. So we can't own any. That's the way to put it. That's why we had started back at the supervisory union, because ultimately that's who's got to make those decisions.
So I presume the town of Westminster owns the land around the high school, does it? So
No.
that, would they be
No.
decided?
So the high school owns about 108 acres around the trails and whatnot around the school. The playing fields are owned by Rockingham.
Right. I thought that site was.
It is Westminster though,
It is
but it's not
Westminster.
owned by the
Right.
Westminster School District.
It's complicated. Yeah.
Maybe another relevant piece of information is that there's now a Building and Grounds Committee. Karen had been serving, and Jeff Carlstrom on that committee for Westminster, but the supervisory union has formed a new one with representatives from all of the buildings, and that group is meeting on September 7th at 2 p.m. to go look at all of the sites in the supervisory union to kind of address the question being raised by some of the board members. Could we not use existing space? What are the possibilities? So Molly Bannock is chairing that. Anybody's welcome to come. Karen and I now, I'll step in where Jeff had been serving, and Karen is on that committee here, and we'll serve on the one for the SU. But so trying to get more of the information that's needed about feasibility in every sense. Because we keep being told, by some board members, oh, there's plenty of space. There are fewer students, and but is it appropriate space?
Appropriate space makes
Right.
total sense, but a centrally located appropriate space that is just too far for people to travel doesn't make sense.
So
Well,
right
that-
now,
Yeah.
and when you say too far to travel,
because that's been brought up.
Yeah,
Right now, we have families, we only offer what we offer in Westminster here and in Rockingham. So anyone from Athens and Grafton is already coming in. Anyone-
yeah, I mean,
So-
but
so-
what you're offering is like hardly, like, I think if you were offering beyond, like, if you were offering expanded hours, then people would definitely be more apt to come.
Mhm.
But 10 hours a week is not like, that, people aren't going to, I mean, I think some people do travel, but like, some people aren't gonna travel for that. They're gonna opt for something broader, closer to home.
Well, and that, again, was part of our excitement about the RFP from
What does that
Studio
mean?
at,
Request for proposal.
Okay.
sorry, thank you. I do get stuck in acronym land. So the proposal from Studio MLA would help us look at site location to determine is, you know, I could, like I said, I could say this parking lot is a perfect location for
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
But is that what you're asking? Is that the best location? Or is
Right.
there another location that might be?
they're gonna help
Feasible.
you determine that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a non-biased third party is gonna like, yeah, yeah.
And also the contract with the independent consultants, the Heart, whatever, I'm
Part of the
forgetting.
child.
Thank you, Heart of the Child. And they're looking at two things. One is the needs.
Yeah.
What is the community perception of need as well? And then secondly, what's the business plan? So I think your question about whether people will travel to it and what will they pay for if it's only 10 hours a week? Will
Yeah, because
they?
you'd have to pay for it. You're saying that it's a money-making, like,
Well, the
you,
expanded service
the
would be.
expanded, like, 10 hours would be paid for, but beyond that.
Correct.
Because the other school districts just, it's within their budget, like, they voted on it. It's not a money-making, right? Like Putney has pre-K, that's, at least pre-K, it's not 0 to 3.
Correct. So
Right.
many districts offer a pre-K program, or you're spending money for families to go to private people. So
Yes.
you as a district are paying, or like, they have a voucher and they can go
Yes.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So looking like after-school care or extended care, if you want, I mean, that's what we do with the after-school program already. I mean, the schools do these programs and continue that. There's actually, the consultant we were speaking with is working on a project up north where it's a private public venture. So there's a private component trying to do parts of it. And when we first proposed this to the state went, hold on a second, this is a new one, we've never seen this. And so they queried me with a lot of questions like you're asking, and we offered all those questions back, and they came back and said, yeah, this is a great proposal. So, so, I mean, that's how we got to where we've gotten to. I think, it's been mentioned Saxon's River, land in Saxon's River, but everywhere that we know of is not available for space or whatnot. And again, from the work that Jennifer did, and I think it'll be supported through Heart of the Child, that here along the 91 corridor is actually more accessible than something that's out a little further.
Well, to be
I think
continued.
Liz had it.
Oh,
I
I'm
think it was
sorry.
covered, I just
Okay,
wanted to,
sorry.
no,
Fine.
nothing.
I didn't, thank you,
That's okay.
thank you. So with that, important topic, and although we would not vote to authorize it as this board, it's still important that we know about it and in the larger picture of the issues within the supervisory union. So thanks, everybody, and listen up in terms, and think about, continue to think about what makes sense. And I look forward to these two reports coming out, and then depending on how they look, the feasibility and the business plan, then we would go to the next step to get even more information through the process with one of the architectural firms. With that, if we can, we have conducted all business. The date and time of our next meeting is September 15th. However, highly likely there'll be a special board meeting on Monday, and so we'll know more about that tomorrow, and I'll get the word out to everybody. Closing comments, so from directors, Charlie, anything you want to add?
No, good meeting. I'm so happy that sixth graders are going to that camp. I'm not
Yeah.
learning about it, but it's just such a great concept. So please, thank you.
Great. Margie, anything else?
No,
Comments,
I'm
questions?
sorry I messed up the
You didn't mess up anything.
I like have no clue how this works.
I do it all the time. I'm not supposed to count either, see, I do that.
That's great. And nothing more from me tonight. Thanks always to Fact TV for helping us document this. And appreciate each of you, and we are adjourned. Thank you.